Should be good to go.
Thank you, Eric. Welcome to the Town of Newington Conservation Commission meeting for May 17th, 2022 at 7:01 p.m. At this time, before we begin, it is with heavy heart that I announce the death of our good friend and fellow commissioner, John Casasanta. His bipartisanship and his level-headedness will be missed, as well as our mutual fondness for 80s heavy metal music. I'll miss our discussions, and I just want to pay my respects at this time. And I welcome other commissioners too, if they have something they'd like to add at the moment, they're welcome to do so. Commissioner Bouchon.
Hi, everyone. I actually went to the service, and even though I told the family, his mother and sister Diana, that, you know, I wasn't there on official representation of the Conservation Commission, but I thought that we probably all were in agreement that we offered our condolences there, and she seemed to appreciate that.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to add at this time?
I think Gail has her hand up.
Please.
Yeah, even though I'm not a commissioner, I've been the liaison for since I started on the town council. But I've been able to observe John's demeanor and his contributions and his level-headedness and his value to this commission. And even before the commission, before I was the liaison, I attended a lot of the Conservation Commission meetings. And I agree with you, Chairman Sadel. He was bipartisan. He was conscientious. He did his homework. He really took the job seriously and had a passion for conservation, wetlands, and inland wetlands, and doing the job that he was appointed to do. And I do truly think his presence will be missed on this commission, and his service was a blessing to this town.
Thank you, Councilor Bedrejko. Commissioner Paskowitz.
Go ahead, Alan. You can unmute yourself.
Sorry. I can't speak too much more than what Councilwoman Bedrejko just spoke to, but I found him to be fair and eloquent in his speaking and humble, but enough power with his knowledge and conversing what he thought generally about which way we should head on applications and discussions. And he became a friend as well, as many other commissioners have over the years that I've been on. And he's a great loss, but nonetheless, we'll speak to him in memoriam. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Paskowitz. Is there anyone else at this time? Okay. Ms. Gibbons, please call the roll.
And Ancona III.
Here.
John Bouchon.
Here.
Bernadette Conway.
Here.
Alan Paskowitz.
Here.
Andrea Sadel.
Here.
Jeff Wagner.
Here.
Okay. Let's move on to
Mr. Chairman, just a point of order, you probably need to seat Commissioner Conway.
yes, I will see Commissioner Conway. Shall we proceed? Okay. Moving on to public participation. For non-agenda items, each speaker is limited to 2 minutes. Do we have anyone on the line?
There's one person in the room, they don't have their hand raised. So.
Okay. Moving on to item 4, acceptance of minutes from April 19th, 2022, regular meeting. Are there any additions or corrections from the commissioners? I'm seeing none. So may I have a motion to accept the minutes of April 19th, 2022, regular meeting of the Conservation Commission.
John Bashand, I'll make the motion to accept the minutes.
So moved by Commissioner Bashant. May I have a second?
Commissioner Wagner, I'll second it.
Commissioner Wagner, second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? The minutes pass unanimously. Moving on to item 5, the public hearing for application number 2022-05 for construction of a single-family homes in the Upland Review area at Church Street and 321 Tremont Street, rear. Applicant and owner A.A. Nofria, Building and Development LLC. Contact Alan Giovanni, continued from April 19th, 2022.
Mr. Chairman, one thing real quick, just the public hearing, I left out the address for Church Street. That should be 359 Church Street as well.
Okay, so noted.
Thank you.
As the applicant present, I wish to present. an
I
update.
am, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Good evening, members of the commission, staff. For the record, my name is Alan Giovanni. I'm a licensed land surveyor in the state of Connecticut. My office address is at 170 Payne Road in Newington. I'm representing A.A. Nofria Building and Development LLC in the application before you. As you said, this is a continuation of a public hearing. I want to do a quick recap on what had transpired at the last meeting, and then we'll go on from there with the new information. At the last meeting, I presented a 32-lot residential subdivision. I'm going to share the screen, so we've got a graphic.
Wasn't it 23 lots, Alan, not 32?
I'm sorry, 23-lot subdivision. Thank you, Eric. I explained the grading, the topography, the configuration of the roadway, about 1,100 foot of roadway terminating in a cul-de-sac. 22 of the lots would be off of Rockhole Lane, one lot fronting on Church Street. It is to be sewered by MDC Sewer. Water is provided by the MDC. And then we had David Lord, our soil scientist, talk about the wetlands. We applied for a wetland map amendment. This commission approved it. And then Joe Perugini, our professional engineer, presented the storm drainage design and water quality designs, which the town engineer and the Planning and Zoning Commission approved. Joe Perugini also presented the erosion and sediment control plan. And that also was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission and the town engineer. Joe did state that the drainage, water quality, erosion, and sediment control have been designed in accordance with the Town of Newington Drainage Manual, DOT guidelines, and the 2002 erosion and sediment control guidelines and best management practices. We presented the temporary wetlands disturbance, which is the crossing of this narrow area of wetlands here to access the sewer, which currently runs east to west. It's a trunk line across the site. This is the only feasible and prudent way to service this with sanitary sewer service. When the sewer main was brought in here in the 60s, there's two mains actually. There's a gravity main and a force main that run parallel in that right of way. It was contemplated at that time, and there were designs, conceptual designs prepared by the MDC to provide sewer service to this parcel of property. We presented the fact that as an open space subdivision, we're preserving 5.85 acres of environmentally sensitive land to be deeded to the town. When you factor in the area of open or conservation easement at the rear of lots 3, 4, and 5, over 6 acres will be protected, which is about 36.6% of the site. We've stated that although we are proposing disturbance in the Upland Review area, approximately 1.5 acres, These disturbances will have no negative effect on the wetlands or watercourse because of the measures designed into this project. Those steps that Mr. Perugini outlined in his presentation, it's documented in our plans, our reports. All of this has been done to minimize any impact of the wetlands or watercourse on this site. We are proposing durable cedar fencing along the open space area. Which is along this area here and this area, and then along the rear of lots 3, 4, and 5. The remainder of the boundaries of the open space, because it's wooded, will be done with posts and placards every 50 feet so that the neighboring properties are well aware that it is a public open space and dumping and things like that are not allowed. It was requested by the commission that the applicant have a wetlands assessment prepared by a qualified professional. We have submitted the requested report as prepared by Soil Science and Environmental Services, Inc., specifically Jen Benno, biologist and wetland scientist. She'll be talking with you in a few minutes. I've also submitted a letter written by attorney Brian Zaccanino about the authority of a wetlands commission, the authority that the Wetlands Commission has, and that I requested this to inform the public as to what is to be regulated. I know the commission's well aware of your charge and the statutes, but I think sometimes it gets lost with the public as to what the charge of a Wetlands Commission is. And if I could just take a minute to read this letter, it's relatively brief. It's dated May 15th, 2022. Dear Mr. Giovanni, per your request, please find the following information regarding the state of Connecticut statutory authority for the Newington Conservation Commission related to inland wetlands activity on the above or reference property. Connecticut General Statutes Section 22A-36 through 22A-45 provide both the statutory authority for the commission to regulate inland wetlands as well as the standards that the commission shall take into account in making its decision. In regards to the regulation of activities that occur in the Upland review area, pursuant to section 22A-42CF, municipal wetland authorities may regulate activities that occur outside the boundaries of wetlands or watercourses if those activities will likely impact wetlands or watercourses. There's a case cited. I won't get into that. In the case of Prestige Builders LLC versus Inland Wetlands Commission, Supra 720, it's noted that, however, although the statute provides authority to regulate activities within the Upland review area, these regulations adopted may only apply to activities which likely impact wetlands and watercourses. And he goes on to say, and he cites a couple other cases, but furthermore, Connecticut General Statutes Section 22A-41(5)D states that a municipal inland wetlands agency shall not deny or condition an application for regulated activity in an area outside of the wetlands or watercourse on the basis of an impact or effect on aquatic, plant, or animal life unless such activity will likely impact or affect the physical characteristics of such wetlands or watercourses. I think it's important for the public to know that. Having said that, before I get to Jen Benno, David Lord has another commitment tonight. So if the commission has any questions for David, and I think he made a complete presentation the last time, if we could indulge Mr. Lord, Mr. Chairman, if anyone has questions.
Absolutely, it's fine. So I do have one question for him, if I may.
Please.
Lord, please state your name and address for the record.
For the record, David Lord, I'm a professional soil scientist and environmental consultant. My company is Soil Resource Consultants. I have an office in Meriden, Connecticut.
So one final question I have for you is that portion of this property is on a floodplain, right? It's considered a floodplain. But that not necessarily mean that it is a wetland soil. Is that the distinction I think we were trying to make at the last meeting? You agree with that?
Yes, that's correct. The fine point to that is the floodplain extends to what is generally referred to as the 1% chance a storm event or 100-year storm event, which is not exactly accurate or current technology or terminology, I should say. Wetland soils, which are alluvial or floodplain soils, generally are inside that line and do not extend out to the 1% storm limits because of the infrequent inundation of those areas. There's no buildup of alluvial or floodplain soils in some areas within the 100-foot or the 100-year storm limits.
The
Did
other,
that answer the
yes,
question?
thank you. And the other question that I had is, did you submit those soil, those borings in that area? Was that what you said? Has that been done basically just for the record so we have that for documentation, please?
The soil borings, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Right, in the areas where you did the delineation with the borings, okay? I think I asked Mr. Bon Giovanni when we had our last month's meeting, said, are there any photographs of those borings that we can take as reference for the record that we can show as evidence? Because there was a drastic reduction in wetland soil, which I agree with you with your conclusion. It's just that it would be nice to have that for the record, because in your report didn't have any photos in it. It was basically a narrative. I'm not doubting the conclusion in any way, shape, or form, but I was just interested in having some photographing of the borings that you took that we have as evidence for posterity. And I think Mr. Bon Giovanni promised that from the last meeting, that he would, even though we closed for the map amendment, he would provide some documentation to that just for the record.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. Alan Bon Giovanni for the record. David, if you recall, we asked you if you could look through your file, if maybe you had some photographs from the days that you did the work on the site.
In answer to that, no, I did not have any photographs of soil borings that show, soil features, colors of the like. I don't generally do that for wetland delineation work. The identification of the soils are in conjunction with the National Cooperative Soil Survey Program. The delineation of wetlands on this site meet those criteria, which are listed in federal statutes. But that's the only documentation per se. Additional on-site documentation were some pink and black stripe flags, which denoted the location of soil borings outside the limit of wetland delineation where the flags were set. Those pink and black stripe flags document the absence of wetland soil characteristics at that particular point on the site. Those are generally not survey located or put on a property map, but they are visible to anyone walking the property. That's what I got.
Chairman, if I may, and with all due respect, I've been locating wetland flags for over 40 years, doing wetland map amendments and wetland presentations, and never had a request for this type of photograph. So people understand the borings you're referring to are the samples that David takes with a hand spade and auger. It's probably 1.5 inches, 2 inches in diameter that he goes down several feet as he twists it by hand and pulls it out and pulls the different horizons of soil. Even if there were photographs, I don't know that they would actually show you anything of any value.
Well, again, I'm not questioning the conclusion. It's just that since we did have a drastic reduction in the wetland soil, I just want to do it for documentation purposes. I don't know who other commissioners feel. That's the only other thing I had to ask Mr. Lord, and we did discuss this at the last meeting. just this, we have document this for posterity. That's all, and we have evidence. Okay, I will go to John Bouchon first. and
Mr.
then-
Chairman, if I may, before, as you pointed out as well, the public hearing for the map amendment is closed. So
That's right.
even taking that in now, if you want to do it as part of the other application, but I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Right, but again, we asked I'll go to Commissioner Bouchon first.
Well, to Eric's point, I guess, why would Mr. Lord even be here if he can't offer anything more to the wetland delineation?
So
I was asked to attend, this is David Lord, I was asked to attend in the instance where any commission members may have questions regarding the wetland versus the proposed development activities. That's the reason for my purpose, not to talk about the delineation per se, because as you've already said, that application was closed.
Okay, so I guess I just had one question, and if it's not allowed, just remind me. You had mentioned, Mr. Lord, you had mentioned that you hadn't been to the site since your initial work, but you had intended that you to go. So have you been since?
I went to the site for a brief period. I don't have the note here what day it was, just to look at the area above the point of the wetlands. That seemed to be the area of question. I would be north of lots 6 and 7. That area, there was evidently on the day of the last meeting, there was a question because there was some surface water sitting on the surface in that area. I did look at that, did not see water sitting on the surface. This was about a week, 10 days after the meeting. I did a couple of additional borings just again to familiarize myself and document to my own mind that yes, this was not a wetland by soil type. And again, as we mentioned, the presence of water in that area on any given point in time is not indicative of a wetland.
Okay. So you're saying that nothing's changed your mind about when you went?
Nothing
and
has
saw it?
changed my mind as to the extent of wetlands relative to the proposed subdivision.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
You're welcome.
Paskowitz.
Yes, Chairman Sedil, I concur with your request for the horizon samplings taken by Dr. Lord. And I find it's a loss that it's not being exhibited now after you requested it and it was acknowledged to be here. I also have worked in the field in wetland delineation with soil scientists, taking the same types of sampling with the same type of spade tool, and taking photographs and submitting them with applications for quite some time. So it is a method of which documentation is provided for areas that are flagged upon taking the samples. And I feel that it's necessary to fully determine what the soils are there. Without that, it's not a full supporting report. That's what I have to say.
Anyone else? Thank you, Commissioner Paskowitz.
So, Mr. Chairman, and my recollection is that it was requested that if there were photos available, if Mr. Lord could provide them. We requested that of Mr. Lord if they were available. I don't believe David had represented that he actually had photos, but he would look through his photos to see if he had something. I apologize that the result was that there were no photos available of the soil samples. Again, it has been my experience in over 40 years that photographs are not typically submitted. I've never had the request. I've never had a commission ask me if there were photographs before this request. I've never seen a regulation that requires photographs to accompany a soil scientist's report. Having said that, I'd like to move on if we could.
All right, I have no other further questions here. I'm a little disappointed, though. That was in the minutes, and I did that was on the record in the minutes from the April meeting. So I took that on good faith that, like I said, I'm not doubting the conclusion. I like documentation, and that's where I'm at with that. So there's no question. It's for the record. It's there forever, and we have substantiation, visual. And when my daughter goes to a party, I mean, the photos are on Instagram before she even gets home. I mean, this is a digital age. It's not a lot to ask. Very simple things. I have seen other applications very recently that they show some samples, they show the soil, and they substantiate their conclusion. And that's the only one thing. I respect Mr. Lord's experience, but that is the digital age right now. And that's, not a big thing to ask. And like I said,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. Chairman, David, do you think over the next week or two, you could maybe visit the site again with your spade and auger and take some photographs?
Certainly, if that's appropriate.
I would
in the
like you to do
application
that for the
process,
commission.
I'd be happy to go back out and dig some borings, both in a wetland area and in the area where the question was at the last meeting. And I'll take photographs and documentation of the soil sample borings that I make. I can certainly provide that. I would agree that it's, in my experience with 44 years of doing this, I've never been asked to provide photos, because a lot of times the photos do not show exactly what the human eye can see in the field. But I would be glad to do that, to provide some soil sampling itself, the physical of the soil sample, and also some photographic documentation.
Thank you, David. And again, Mr. Chairman, it wasn't our intent to disrespect the commission by not providing those. They weren't provided because they weren't available. But we will work to remedy that situation.
Again, if I can speak, Mr. Chairman, again, this is after the public hearing. They really can't be entered into evidence as part of the map amendment.
I got him on, he said, he made a promise to me. I'm not doubting the conclusion.
No, I understand that, Chairman. I
fully support that.
I mean, these are the kind of legalities that we want to try and avoid. That's it.
Mr. Nofria wishes to speak. Please name and record for the record, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Anthony Denorfia, 133 Main Street, Southington. In addition to being a developer for 40 plus years, I was also for about 30 years land use attorney, substantially doing work on these type of projects. And again, this is something that I haven't heard in all that time. I also have quite a bit of experience in Newington, having built a total of probably 120 units, but that was in the 90s. As far as this, what I have seen in the past from some commissions, and I'm not quite sure why this commission doesn't have that, is that the commission would schedule, because we have nothing to hide, that the commission would schedule a site walk in the presence of the soil scientist who would explain his delineation, because seeing it by visual evidence is the best way. To see it by photos, as I have to agree with it, is next to useless. I don't recall that conversation that you had with Alan at the last meeting.
Well, I do.
Well, okay, you do.
And you were in the back.
Said I
You were
don't
sitting right
recall
next to him.
Mr. Chairman, I said I don't recall the conversation. Okay. or else we would have complied. We've tried to comply with every single item that the town has requested, from planning and zoning to staff to this commission, as far as putting up not only this fencing that we're proposing and the plantings and everything like that, but we've tried to make a very reasonable and efficient project that has no impact on the permanent impact on the wetlands, which so far all of that evidence has provided. You know, I think if you go through and you hear from our next expert, she will have some comments on this wetlands and this impact also. But again, I would offer that if you would really like to see that, again, David could take his photographs, but if you would like to have a site walk, a commission site walk, which you can schedule an on-site meeting, we'd be more than happy to do that also.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, I'd like to introduce Jen Benno and have Jen talk about her report and her findings, her conclusions, and her recommendations. I did submit to the commission last week a draft report, and then followed up today with a final report. The only difference between the two is Jen did a little proofreading and corrected a couple typos. There are no substantial changes or changes in any substance in the final report from what was submitted to you last week. And with that, Jen, it's your show.
Thank you very much. For the record, I'm Jen Benno, biologist with Soil Science and Environmental Services, and I've been with the company since 1994. I'm also one of the owners. Our office is located in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. So after your last public hearing, Alan called me up and said, hey, we need an environmental assessment report. Can you get it done in a month? And I said, okay, I'll try. So on April 28th, I went out and I inspected the property. I looked at the uplands, and I also looked at the wetland corridor that was delineated by David Lord. And then I reviewed the plans developed by the Giovanni group. There's one thing I just want to, I guess, follow up on, even though it was in the last meeting. I guess it was a statement from the last public hearing regarding potential, somebody observed a swamp cottonwood, which is a threatened species in Connecticut. I just want to give you a little background. Swamp cottonwoods are considered to be obligate wetland species, which means they occur in wetlands 99% of the time. And they're at the northern edge of their range, which is why they're threatened. There's very few populations left in New England. I did observe a few eastern cottonwoods within the upland areas on the site, and they are considered like a facultative plant, so they can either grow in wetlands or non-wetland or upland areas. And the eastern cottonwoods were primarily identified by the leaf characteristics. And I have like a couple examples here. I don't know if you could see them. And that's characteristic of eastern cottonwood. So no swamp cottonwoods were observed. And particularly, I was looking in the temporary wetland impact area. We didn't observe any cottonwoods near that area. So now I'll briefly go over the wetland assessment report, which you have a draft of and supposedly was updated, but the final copy is dated May 12th, 2022. So as you know, the project site is located in a residential area. It's surrounded by residential development. The uplands on the property consist of open woodland and some woodland with really, really dense shrub and herbaceous understory growth. And then there's also a mowed area up near Church Street. There's also a sidewalk along the edge of Church Street there. The uplands on the property, a lot of them, especially in the eastern and central portion of the site, appear to have been disturbed. maybe by some excavation, maybe by some filling, definitely by some dumping. I did observe some fill piles in the eastern portion of the site. And then also some discarded debris in the central portion of the site, some in your typical yard clippings along the southern property boundary. There's also a sewer line that passes through the wetland corridor, enters onto the northern portion of the property. Yeah, there's a crossing. Can you just go back to the crossing? Yeah, so it crosses the Rock Hole Brook wetland corridor offsite, then it enters onto a property through the wetland and then goes through the non-wetland areas. So as you heard, the wetland corridor associated with Rock Hole Brook was delineated by David Lord, and that is present in the northern portion of the property primarily. And then there's a little finger that extends off of the main corridor into the central portion of the site. And I was informed that that was remnant of the Rock Hole Brook bypass for when they installed the sewer through the brook and wetland area. So that narrow wetland there had approximately 3 inches of water when I inspected it during the April inspection. I did a follow-up inspection on May 13th, and that area had dried up. There was no standing water in that area any longer, and the soils on the surface were still saturated, but there's no standing water. There is, well, the wetland is primarily dominated by what we call a palustrian forested wetland or wooded swamp. Except in the northeastern corner of the site where Rock Hole Brook enters onto the property from under Church Street. And that area there is dominated by a palustrian emergent wetland, which is just an emergent wetland, shallow marsh, and a palustrian scrub shrub or shrub swamp community. And there's also a small area that is being maintained as mowed lawn. Let's see, the small area of emergent shrub swamp in the northeast corner of the wetland is dominated by red maple saplings, alder, silky dogwood, spice bush, multiflora rose, skunk cabbage, jewelweed sedges, Japanese knotweed, and bittersweet. The remainder of the wetland, as I mentioned, is a forested wetland, and it provides dense tree canopy cover and fairly moderate understory growth of herbaceous and shrub vegetation. And the vegetation is dominated by red maple, elm, pin oak, spice bush, alder, multiflora rose. There's some shrub honeysuckle in there, Japanese barberry. There's some arrowwood, burning bush, skunk cabbage, dogtooth violet, also known as trout lily. That little yellow flower that comes up this time of the year. There's jack in the pulpit, soft rush, sedges, sensitive fern, manna grass, jewelweed, false hellebore. And as I mentioned, that narrow band or the finger of wetland that extends into the central portion of the site, that's also dominated by a palustrian forested wetland. But the central portion of that wetland contains very few trees or shrubs. It's fairly open. Also in that area, I did not observe any amphibians, egg masses, or tadpoles. So Rock Hole Brook enters the site from the east, as I mentioned, flows to the site, off the site, back onto the site in the western portion of the property. I did observe mallard ducks, Canada goose, a great blue heron within the watercourse channel closest to Church Street. There's likely finfish habitat. I didn't see any fish during my inspections. So the primary functions provided by the wetland include groundwater discharge, sediment and nutrient retention and removal, shoreline stabilization, wildlife habitat, and uniqueness. And uniqueness is because it provides so many functions and is located in a residential area. So it's, a developed area. There is a highway methodology form with supporting documentation included at the end of the report. So you can look at the factors and characteristics which led to the conclusions of the dominant functions. I did observe some wildlife species common to Connecticut on the site, including deer, tracks, and scat, robin, goldfinch, mallard duck, Canada goose, great blue heron, mourning dove, downy woodpecker, cardinal, and towhee. I also reviewed the Connecticut Deep Natural Diversity Database Division map dated December 2021, just to see if there were any known listed species on or near the property. And the map indicates no listed species that are known on the property or in the area. So now I'll just go over the impacts, which you've already heard about. We reviewed the March 18th, 2021 plan sheets prepared by Giovanni Group. The applicant's proposing to impact approximately 448 square feet, temporary impact, 448 square feet of the wetland. That little wetland finger in the central portion of the site. And that is to connect to the existing sewer line. They're proposing to stockpile the wetland soils and then replace them onto the disturbed wetland area after the sewer pipe has been installed. Let's see, the applicant is proposing to remove the point discharge from the southern wetland boundary, and that's the discharge of stormwater from Rock Hole Lane. And also to remove approximately 35 feet of pipe from the Upland review area. And I believe Joe Perugini, the professional engineer from Weston and Sampson, described that work at the last meeting. And the work will result in improved water quality and also reduce the potential for erosion. So then we get to the proposed upland review area impacts. According to Bon Giovanni, approximately 1.6 acres of the upland review area will be disturbed in association with the construction of the project, and that's for basically vegetation activities. So there could be potential impacts caused by that clearing and grading activity close to the wetlands. And typically, those potential impacts could include the human intrusion into wetland areas, and also increased sunlight to the edge of the wetland, and also increase invasive species growth. And that generally occurs when you have an increase in sunlight to the edge of a wetland. So to reduce those potential impacts, we recommend that native non-invasive tree and or shrub plantings be installed along the edge of clearing closest to the wetlands. They're there. Plantings will supplement the remaining vegetation, provide wildlife habitat, and also a natural screen. So after inspecting the project site and reviewing the plan sheets, it's our professional opinion that the proposed temporary wetland impact and activities within the regulated upland review area will not have a significant impact or significant adverse impact on the functions provided by the wetlands, as long as the project is developed in accordance with the reviewed plans, the temporary wetland disturbance is restored successfully, buffer plantings are installed, and the stormwater treatment and erosion and sedimentation control measures approved by the town of Newington are properly installed and maintained. So I do have a few recommendations, like I usually do. The first one I already discussed, and that's the installation of native non-invasive shrub and or tree plantings along the upland review area edge of clearing near wetlands. And the Bon Giovanni Group has submitted a plan sheet with proposed plantings. I took a look at it, and all the species are native to the area and are non-invasive and do provide wildlife habitat. The next recommendation was to install a visual demarcation, because this goes back to the human intrusion element. So we recommend a visual demarcation be installed along the edge of the wetland where development is close to the wetland boundary and where lots continue through the wetland. And what are those lots? 3, 4, and 5 or something? Yes. So the Bond Giovanni group has added split rail fence in that area. And as you heard, they're proposing placards on posts. The next recommendation, all sedimentation erosion control measures approved by the town be installed and maintained properly until the project has been stabilized. The next recommendation is that invasive species be removed from the temporary wetland disturbance area that is being restored, and also from the buffer planting areas. And finally, we recommend biologists just do an inspection immediately following installation of the buffer plantings, just to document that they've been installed correctly. And then we do recommend follow-up inspections. Could be for 5 years. It could be until the commission is satisfied that everything is established properly and successfully. And that would just be to document the success and the survival rate of the shrub plantings or tree plantings. Also to document any problems with invasive species and or potential erosion issues. So I think that about covers the wetland assessment report. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer.
Thank you.
Jen. Waiting.
Mr. Chairman, so Jen had mentioned that we prepared an upland review planting plan. That was, I believe, distributed to you from Eric. We submitted that to him this morning. Paper copies as well as electronic. I've got a copy up on the screen. We're proposing about a 500-foot stretch of area along the clearing limits where we're close to the wetlands, as Jen recommended, so that we provide the buffering, habitat and such, and screening of light as Jen recommends.
So if I may ask you, Mr. Bongiovanni, so have you changed anything for the fencing based on her recommendations? You had mentioned that last time, but has that been expanded, added to based on her recommendations? Or is that part of the plan still in place, no changes?
That's part of the plan still in place. There are no changes. So when we decided where to put the fencing, we did that and we had conversation with town staff a few months back as to the appropriate places to put it. And we selected the areas where there was going to be clearing, and then along the rear of the lots or into the lots that where we have lots 3, 4, and 5, where we have upland review area on a good portion of the lots. In the actual wooded areas, it doesn't make sense to really clear a line to put a fence in. And it was agreed by the town staff, town engineer, myself, I think Eric was part of that conversation, that we would put 4x4 wood posts every 50 foot on center with placards denoting that it's a open space, do not dump, warning signs on that, so that it's very evident to anybody that's out in the woods that there is something there. They would be put along the property line. And then again, the areas that are appropriate for fencing, where there would be clearing in that, we would install the fence.
A question relative to lots 3, 4, and 5. Now, is the fencing going to be in front of your plantings or behind it? I'm concerned that, is that area protected with an easement? If somebody goes in there with the clippers and start, I'm saying, is that going to be, whoever is that homeowner is going to be aware of that's there for, not just for multiple reasons?
Right. So as we showed it originally, the fence was going to be basically 1 foot inside the easement area. Our proposal is to do the plantings up against the fence as a condition of those lots and in their deeds that this is a conservation easement, and that language will be added that there is a planted buffer along the fence line that has to be left in its natural state and can't be removed.
I guess, Commissioner Bashant, you've been waiting for a while, so I'll let you ask a question. If there was anything else, Mr. Giovanni, you wanted to say?
I think that's it as far as presentation, and I know there's gonna be questions, so we'll be happy to answer them.
Commissioner Bashant?
The first obvious one is, we have a copy of a draft in our hands. And how much has it changed? Or did you read all the changes, or is there very minimal changes?
So I'll let Jen answer that.
Yeah, the changes are extremely minimal.
Okay.
I think I might have taken out a punctuation, like a comma here, or added a comma or something, very minimal, nothing
That's
substantive.
all, but it was an obvious first question I had.
Yeah, oh
And
yeah,
then-
because when I saw a draft on there, I said, uh-oh, wait a minute.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Good question.
And
So
if I may real quick, and I did email you the final draft.
I didn't see it, Eric. So
Chairman.
if you did, I must have missed it. Sorry.
Yes, it did go out today with the planting plan as well.
Okay. Your assessment that the impact will be minimal. I agree, you know, the work in the wetlands is minimal, so that's never been my concern. My concern from the beginning, from the first time I saw this plan, and I hope that Ms. Benno, you could maybe comment on that, is the overall impact from the amount of encroachment on this project. So in other words, is that open space, does it offset the amount of encroachment? You know, the road is part of the road is, you know, the regulated area goes right across the street to the other side. And how many lots are impacted with regulated area? And those lots 3 and 4, especially 5, maybe not so much, but lots 3 and 4 are very problematic. And so if you could just, if you have an opinion on that, you know, do you believe that this open space is a fair offset? Because I have no concern about the temporary work for the sewer going in. I'm not worried about that at all. I'm worried about the overall potential impact of the future.
Yeah, as there has in the past been a lot of activity on this property already. So you have to take that into consideration. There are a lot of invasive species on the property. As I stated in my conclusion, after doing my inspection and reviewing the proposed plans, it's our professional opinion that there will not be a significant adverse effect on the wetlands or the functions provided by the wetlands. I don't know if that helps you or anything. I did have concerns with lots 3, 4, yeah, and like you say, not so much 5, and that's why I did make the recommendation that there should be a visual barrier. And the applicant is willing to do that. And I did recommend the plantings, and they did provide a planting plan. So yeah, that follows with my recommendations.
Okay, and then regarding the fencing, I'm a little unclear on what that's supposed to, is that supposed to stop the homeowners from entering the wetlands, or
So the intention.
or the public? Is it going to be, you know, open to the public as open space, or?
So the intention of the fencing is to be along the conservation easement on lots 3, 4, and 5 with placards on the posts so that they know not to dump. You know, if you look at every house or almost every house, if not every house along the south of our property, it is their dumping ground. Their grass clippings, their branch, their broken toys. There's a swing set that's been pushed back there. I mean, there's no fence, there's nothing there, so they use it as if it was their own vegetation dump. This is to eliminate that potential problem from happening. There's going to be a physical fence from the corner of lot 6 through lot 5, lot 4, lot 3, and then up along the property line to the street line, and then it's about a 20-foot return, so that it frames what is the town open space. It'll be the same thing on the other side. We have a 20-foot fence along the street line, and then along this first straight leg, complete fencing back to that area, so that it doesn't preclude anyone from entering the property. I think there's some nice educational value to this wetland. It's a nice open mostly open understory. That's quite park-like, and that's what we're looking to preserve. And we don't want to preclude people from using this as public open space and to enjoy it for what it is. But the work we've done around it, where the houses are going to be, is to preclude them from disturbing it, dumping things they shouldn't dump in there, and protecting it.
Well, we all know that, I mean, that's a good effort, I think, because we all know that if someone has an embankment on their property, and oftentimes it does go into a wetland, that it becomes a private landfill. So, so again, on that lots 3 and 4, the fence is going to be through the private property, correct? Just north of the
Plantings.
Conservation line.
Yep.
Not just south of the property line.
No. So it's going to go again. It's going to start at the street. It's going to go along the west side of lot 3 and then follow the conservation easement through lot 4 and lot 5 and terminate at the corner of lot 6.
So it'll physically block someone with a wheelbarrow or a lawn tractor from driving down there and dumping.
Correct.
All right. Well, I think that's good. I still have concerns about those 2 lots. And I think I used the term at the other meeting that we're setting people up, some of these lots up possibly for a collision course with this commission. So only because we know the tendency of people to want to utilize their own land as a landfill when they have that opportunity, especially when the topography allows for it like that.
One of the things that in working on developments, doing literally thousands of lots and plot plans over my career, not everybody wants a big yard. Not everybody wants a half acre or a quarter of an acre to mow. Many people are very satisfied with that. And this would be known to a home buyer, that there's a conservation easement across the back of that lot. And the plantings have to be maintained, and that you can't have your entire yard being cleared. And a lot of people really enjoy that. A lot of people look for that. It's less to maintain, and it provides them some nice privacy as well.
That's all for me right now. Thank you.
Mr. Peskowitz, you had your hand up.
Yes, Chairman Sedil, thank you. Jen Beno, welcome back. Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
There's quite a bit of documentation you provided here with a lot of specifications, and I've gone through it several times. A question for you on page 7. Well, you make a statement that a narrow band of wetland extends off the main wetland and watercourse corridor into the central portion of the site. Up to 3 inches of standing water was observed within the narrow wetland area. No amphibians, egg masses, or larvae were observed within the standing water during the inspection. This was done on April 28th, Jen, your inspection?
Yes, the first inspection, then I followed it up on May 13th.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and there was no standing water there.
Okay. You mentioned that there was no observance, though, of egg masses or any other things regarding habitat within water bodies on the property, including vernal pools. What time of the year typically do these frogs and salamanders breed in our area, if you know?
Well, I can speak from a project I'm working on right now, which is, I can't say because it's a confidential project, but it's fairly in your area. And I was out, when was I out there? March, and I heard wood frogs. I was out there early April or mid-April, and I saw spotted salamander egg masses and wood frog egg masses. So they start breeding, depends on the year. It's going to be March, April, or it could be even early as late February, depending on the weather. And then they need to have maintained water supply or certain water depth through June, typically, or into June, to support development of tadpoles into adults. So typically, this is the time of year you want to look for them. We should be right smack in the middle of it, getting towards the development stage now.
Would the temperatures that we've had, as you know, they've been colder than usual during days and nights in the past month, be relative to the breeding not occurring or slowing down?
Well, there's nothing on this site because you don't have any areas of standing water. So there's no vernal pool or amphibian breeding habitat on this site, but other sites, yes. The cold weather that we had, like I heard spring peepers out real early, and then we had freezing nights. And they had to go back into hibernation, and then they came out when it warmed up again. Sometimes that's what happens during certain years.
Oh, so they will go back to hibernation. I see. I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I see your credentials here that you have a zoology bachelor's degree. During the course of your education and after that, have you been involved in any research studies or work studies in the field regarding habitat that may move over a course of days at different hours to be observed by field cameras set out to see what kind of habitat may be moving around at night when no one's out looking at property?
No,
I'm sorry?
no.
You've never been involved in that or research or no? Okay.
Nope.
I thought of that the other day because I was out there during the day, not even close to nighttime. It was like mid-afternoon, and I saw deer and hawk and such. And then I heard, people had seen fox and other species there. I saw large holes dug here and there by an animal. I don't know what they were because I don't identify dug holes for animals, but they were fairly large in different areas. I just find now, after thinking about this project and other projects in the past, it'd probably be more helpful to me if an evaluation was done on our property for habitat that we may not see during the day, but that may come out at night in travel, which I've seen in camera displays from evaluations in different states. And it's interesting what goes on at night. More than I expected. If I had thought of this before, I would have made a recommendation for it on this site. Maybe it'd be a first thing in Connecticut, or anybody who spent 40 years in any part of the state to see things. I look for new things in current science reports and exploration. I'm not a static type of person. I've never been. And I just feel more following of habitat is more important today because fragmentation of land and wetlands has chased them onto other properties, including my own. I have more rabbits, squirrels, and deer are on my road now on Cambria Avenue near Town Hall. They're crossing the road. We have fox here in my neighborhood. This is right near Town Hall. We have coyote. So, and I'm not on a wetland, and I'm not on a wooded lot anymore. There's all the houses around me 10 feet apart, 15 feet apart, and they're coming here. So I have concerns about fragmentation of land, especially wetland, and where are these animals going to go? They're going to cross the street and get run over by a car. are they going to go on to another property? It's already a, a neighborhood of their own species and become more, of an impact on the neighbors and their homes and the roads. And, I'm concerned about these things. And, I follow these documents that everybody's supporting here. And, and you've done a, fine job of things. I just think more exploration needs to be done on these properties now. Not specific just to this property, but on all properties that are being fragmented with subdivisions especially. And I see this subdivision as a very significant percentage of this, what I call an ecosystem lot. I don't have a lot more questions for you. I mean, you can only spend so much time in the field doing this, and obviously you're not going to be out there in a tent at night waiting for the wildlife to walk unless somebody would pay you for it, and then I'd be there to join you to see what we could see. But there's another area in here you had starred on the page, and I can't find it. It had to do with uniqueness. Do you remember that portion of it?
Yes.
Could you speak to that a little bit more in detail so I can comprehend it?
Yeah. Uniqueness is one of the potential functions provided by the wetland. And that's part of the highway methodology form that we fill out now. And that's just a function and value evaluation form. And all the criteria and the qualifiers are included at the end of the report. So in this case, the wetland has uniqueness because it does provide several wetland functions. It provides a groundwater discharge. It provides actually some, I'm assuming, fish habitat, although I didn't see any. There's sediment, nutrient retention and removal, production or nutrient export, shoreline stabilization, wildlife habitat. Really, right now, it doesn't provide any recreation or education because it's private property. But once that goes into a conservation easement and the public can access it, then as Alan mentioned, you could have potential for educational value in there. And also it's unique because it is in a residential area. So part of protecting that uniqueness is protecting approximately 6 acres of the site. And most of that is along the Rockhole Brook wetland and watercourse corridor. So I think that's really important. They're protecting the wetlands by putting a conservation easement on there. So they're protecting the functions and also its uniqueness.
Thank you, Jen.
I want to not leave you, but I want to jump to Alan Giovanni for his historical background in Newington regarding property. Could I please do that?
Sure.
Alan, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. There's two developments. There's a development of properties, buildings and properties on both sides of this wetland and land area. So the question to you is this, because you would know this, I'm sure, more than even myself. Why wasn't that land developed before, right down to the sewer line that's there? Why did they stop at the Rockhole Brook area? And why did they stop at the Upland area and leave that a remaining piece of property and not completely develop it?
So there were different properties and different ownership. The property to the south, Winslow Drive, that subdivision was developed in the mid 80s, was part of the Edmund Farm, a dairy farm. The property that is the application before you was owned since the early 60s by Frank and Esther Eddy. Frank Eddy always had a plan to develop this in his retirement years. And it's, for whatever reason, that just didn't happen. His wife chose to sell it over the last year and a half or so prior to her death. You know, so there was different ownerships. It wasn't the same developer that owned both pieces of property and just didn't develop it. The Eddies decided they were not ready to develop it for whatever reason, whatever personal reasons they had, and it sat vacant till Esther decided to sell the property.
Is this the same Eddie that owned the Eddie Farm over there on Lord Avenue?
No, it's not. They lived on the east side of Church Street, farther to the north. Frank Eddy owned Century 21 Eddy Real Estate.
I know you can answer this because you're very diligent in land use, and you have been for quite a few years, and the people you hire or bring in with you are of the same caliber. The sewer line that's there, I'm thinking that's being utilized for the homes on both sides of this property.
It is. It's actually, so you have two things. You have a gravity line and you have a force main. And I believe this work was put in the Red Rock development. When Jack Sells had developed the Red Rock properties, Tremont Street in that area, that's when the sewer main was brought to that area. So it gravity's down to a point and then it gets pumped out of that area.
Does that sewer line cross the Church Street bridge and then pass through? Or where does it stop and end?
So it crosses over in this area here, like a mid property. Basically, the sewer line comes from the northwest into the property, crossing the brook, goes in an easterly direction, veers south. You've got one line that goes to the northeast, and then another line that goes to the southwest. One's the gravity, one's the force main.
So these homes that are proposed to be constructed, are they going to be completely utilizing this sewer line?
The sewer for the proposed development, will terminate at this point where we're proposing to put a new manhole over the gravity. You know, some of the history of this property, like the diversion swale that was created by the MDC or the contractor when they actually constructed this main line, altered the natural state of the property. When the MDC put this line in, there's actually sewer laterals for every one of these lots already stubbed off that main. And the developer has the right to utilize those. But
could you repeat that? Did you say that the lateral lines are already?
There's Ys and lateral stubs all along this sewer line to service these potential lots. Whether it was
So
this configuration.
Is that how these lots were tallied into place based on those lateral lines?
That's how it was contemplated, that they would be sewered directly to that line, because we're more, because that was in the 60s, because we're more environmentally conscious these days. We're proposing to construct the main in the street and have those laterals for the houses on the north side of the road come into the new main, so that we only have one minimal disturbance to cross for the sewer main, as opposed to, you know, all the disruption of the trees and everything else just to put the sewer line connections in.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that history. I'm sure there's not many people in town that could give me such a thorough explanation of, you know, prior.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. One of the other things I think I need to mention, and in Jen's presentation, she talked about, you know, in the eastern part of the property, there's concrete dumping and things like that. This is the work of our town. When Church Street Bridge was reconstructed some 15, 20 years ago, a lot of those sidewalk slabs that were pulled out and replaced sit here in a pile. There's a pile of rock and construction debris and pavement that the contractor dumped on this property without permission. And some is in the upland review area and the regulated areas. And you know, it's something that this developer will have to clean up.
Well, in my time in walking in the woods and forests through New England, I've seen dump sites in places where there are trees now where there weren't before. There were fields and farms, but the dumps still remain. And that's been a constant in history of land, not just in Connecticut, but in everywhere. Is, you know, the closer we come into the margin of, you know, undeveloped land, and I used to look for vintage bottles in these dump sites across the state of Connecticut as a hobby as well. So I'm well aware of many of these places that are in the woods that, unless you know where they are or you come upon them, they're there. But nonetheless, thank you for your thorough explanation.
You're welcome.
I don't have anything else, Ms. Beno. Thank you, Ms. Beno. I appreciate your going through my discussion with you. Thank you.
I do have a few questions for Ms. Banner before we can go to the public. Mr. Hinckley, I know that's been waiting online. It's already been over an hour, 15 minutes. So just a few questions, Ms. Banner. You mentioned this natural diversity database, okay? Now, tell me the history of that. Is that something that a deep goes in and looks at the property, or is this one of these bulk assessments that they do and check the boxes kind of thing? Can you tell me more about that database and why it's important, or how that's constructed, how it's put up to date, how it's taken?
Sure. I think it's a variety of resources. It could be from old college, you know, information, because the records go way back to like the 1800s for certain populations. And then some other is just from like you and me, or your typical residents going out, and maybe you see a box turtle crossing a site, or maybe you see, like, I don't know if you have any in town, but a nesting bald eagle. You could report those incidents to the natural diversity database. They actually have forms that you can fill out, and then they could add that into their database. So they take all of this information that's contributed from all different sources in the state, and they actually update their lists and their maps, I think twice a year. So a new map should be coming out in June. So June and December.
So it's up to the citizens to be conscientious enough to report it, basically.
It's up to citizens, it's up to people like me, consultants, it's up to, you know, research people with different universities or any kind of different projects. You know, anybody can report anything that is a listed species. And they actually have an updated list. Let me check here. Hartford County has a report of Connecticut's endangered, threatened, and special concern species, which was updated December 14th of 2021. So they periodically update the list, and that's available on the DEEP website.
Yes, I was going to bring up, Chairman, that is available on the DEEP website. There's lots of information about the NDDB on there. You can look at, they have certain publications on different species of concern, et cetera. And just as an aside, it is a requirement. That note was already placed on the plans. Every wetland plan that comes in, I have them place that note on there and review that. It's also a requirement of TPZ as well.
Okay, thank you. Next question. You took very great inventory of the species, the plant species. But I'm interested in impacts. Okay, the delta, what's going to happen? What's this wetland going to look like after the fact? Okay, and I know that this is a known deer migration path, right? They come from Church Street, they traverse this property, they go westerly. Is that, we've seen that you've seen evidence of that? That's going to continue. How is that going to be impacted? And number one, it's going to sort of squeeze the amount of area that they can move through. And is there a potential that all these plantings, deer basically eat everything, okay? Could we put these plantings in there and they could eat them right up and move along the trail, so to speak, and we lose the purpose of even putting those plantings in there? Do you see that could happen?
Well, there's always a potential because like you say, deer will eat anything. But that is part of, it's built into the inspection process. So the follow-up inspections that we do for a few years after installation. So if we find that there's a survivability issue, and it could be, maybe they just had a bad batch, maybe they were diseased when they were put in, maybe they didn't get enough water, maybe the deer are coming through and eating them. We can make an assessment at that time. And if there is a lot of browse, we can adjust the species if we need to. But we would still use native, non-invasive species. And that would be something that we'd either bring through staff or a commission or something like that. But that's kind of a reason that we have the follow-up inspections. It's sort of to kind of check that.
Okay, last question is your dominant wildlife inventory. This is on page 18 of your report. I'm surprised that the hawk was not put in there in the list, because I did see there's 3 hawks' nests. I just do my site work, which I'm thankful for doing.
Yeah.
But I did see the hawks. I saw Mr. and Mrs. I saw 3 of them. The 3rd nest was empty by Church Street. They were on the right-hand side as you go down Rock Hill Lane. I don't know where they were on the map because I had no orientation. I was just walking around. I didn't know, but I did surprise. I realized they're not endangered. Okay. But are they going to be impacted? Are they going to be in, property number 9 or number 8? I would guess somewhere 7, 8 there. It's where they were the tallest trees and they were sitting there. I'm surprised it's not there, but again, there's a food source. They're going to eat anything that's on this list. I mean, they're called raptors for nothing, right?
Yeah.
So, what's the impact to them? Are they going to be able to survivability, or are they just going to have to find somewhere else to go?
Yeah, they'll have to find somewhere else to go if the tree that they want to nest in, or they are nesting in, is removed. Unfortunately, and I didn't hear any when I was out there. So it's kind of hit or miss. It really depends the day you're out there, the time you're out there. And I was only out there for, twice. So I didn't see anything.
All right. That's unfortunate. Okay, commissioners, really quick. I want to go to the public real quick. So I'm going to go Mr. Allen and then John, and then we're going to go to the public. Okay, Mr. Paskowitz, Commissioner Paskowitz, please.
Yes, I believe I spoke to the hawks being observed by myself as well. When I was out there, I saw 2 on a branch, probably, I don't know, telephone pole height in the air with a nest. There were red-tailed hawks, and as I was proceeding through the wetlands in different parts, they were following me in the air, both low and high above canopy, watching me, saying, what are you doing here? And so they were there, as well as the 2 deer that I observed on the way out towards Church Street, significant whitetails, both of them, male and female. My concern of land development where we have habitat of wildlife, aquatic life, birds, nesting and such, maybe those animals aren't rare and endangered right now, but they will be on the list in a point in time, the more we fragment their ecosystem and habitat where they live. It's only a matter of time where they're going to be on the list, because there are many animals that are on the list now that weren't on the list 10 years ago in the world, never mind Connecticut as well. And it's going to continue because they don't have anywhere else to go. They're going to die off, or they're going to get killed by roads and such. So rare and endangered is coming more and more often by the day. The list will continue. That's my take on these list that we have today for natural diversity, that is going to grow as I see it. That's my take on it. So I did see the hawks as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Bashan.
So the plantings on like lots 3 and 4, they're going to be owned by the property owners, including the fence. Eventually, that's going to be in their possession, I am assuming, correct? The
Yes,
town has no jurisdiction over it.
yes.
And the easement itself, it's a conservation easement, and it's named in the town's favor. Is that correct as well?
That is correct.
So the town can enforce, in other words, if the owner took the fence down or cut the plants down, the town could enforce something there and force
Yes.
them to replace it.
Yes.
So who would be responsible for the cost of the replacement of that fence in the future?
It's going to be an amenity to the lot. So if the homeowner chose to take the fence down, the town wanted them to replace it, they have to replace it. As a cedar fence, it should
Yeah,
probably last
it's gonna be there a long time.
75 years.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it'd be that long, but yeah, it'll last a long time, obviously. Okay, thank you.
All right. What about the rest of the commissioners? Ms. Conway, I'll go to you first. Do you have any questions at this point before we go to the public?
No, I've been listening intently and getting a lot of information. I appreciate all the questions that the other commissioners have been asking. They've been going, they've addressed a lot of the concerns that I've had throughout the presentation and hearings. So I don't have any further questions right now. Thank you.
Commissioner Wagner.
No, I have no questions at this point.
Commissioner Ancona.
No, I've been listening carefully. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hinckley, let's go. Who's waiting online from the public?
There's one individual in the room that does not have his hand raised. I do have an email that I received that I wanted to read into the record as part of the public testimony. This is from Marie Riccio at 333 Church Street. Her statement is, I am very concerned about the proposed building on wetlands abutting my family's property. My parents bought this property to enjoy many different species of wildlife, from waterfowl that hatch their eggs year after year, a large herd of deer, many generations, even to watch the birth year after year on these wetlands. The area that is proposed is the path the deer use to move around. What is going to be done to protect the wildlife if they become displaced? This is a unique area, one of a kind. It is designated wetlands and should not be built on, as it is the only home left for wildlife. That's it.
No one else online.
Do not have their hand raised.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
go ahead, Ms. Giovanni.
in response to, I guess it was Ms. Riccio.
It was, Marie Riccio.
Marie. So the statement, houses in the wetlands, we're not proposing to put houses in the wetlands. We do have some houses cited in the Upland review area. This is an application for inland wetlands and watercourses, a permit to work in the inland wetlands and watercourses. Although the commission is labeled the Conservation Commission, to my knowledge, there is no conservation regulations in the town of Newington, nor is there an application for the Conservation Commission other than the inland wetlands and watercourses application that we filed, and that's the public hearing that we're going through. The commission, although we, and as a resident of Newington, feel for the people with the wildlife. I live in an area, I have every species that people talked about through this hearing and my property on a regular basis. I live here in Newington. The wildlife will adapt. This commission does not have the authority to deny an application based on displacement of wildlife. As valuable as the deer are, as cute as the deer are, there's a lot of areas where they become an absolute nuisance. For instance, where the state has organized hunts to eliminate populations along the coastline because of the incidence of Lyme disease. And this is noted to be a very bad year for ticks. On the other side of the coin, as I walked this site over the last couple weeks, one of the tree stands from the deer hunters is still there. I pushed it over because I felt it was unsafe and I didn't want some kid to climb on it and fall. This is a nice area. It's not a pristine area. It has been a dumping ground for many of the neighbors. It has been a hunting ground for many of the neighbors. We believe that the open space that we are creating provides a nice buffer along this wetland corridor, a green space along the corridor, and the wildlife will be able to traverse the area, live in the area, and go to and from whatever locations they travel to through that area that we're leaving undisturbed. Thank you.
Okay. So if there's any further questions from commissioners, do we feel we want to close the public hearing this evening? You want more time to digest the report that just came out? What is the feeling from the commissioners?
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Commissioner Bashan.
I'm comfortable closing the public hearing. Obviously, we haven't had a lot of interest from the public. I'm not ready to act upon it tonight. I don't know how others feel. But I am comfortable closing the hearing. And Eric, we have, we're not rushed to acting on it tonight. Is that correct?
So here, the situation with the public hearing is you have 35 days to close the public hearing. So that date, since it opened in April, is next week, next Tuesday.
No, but I'm saying act upon the application. So then the clock starts ticking.
Again, and I finished, and then you have 35 days to render a decision after the close of the public hearing.
Okay.
So if you intend on keeping the public hearing open, you will have to, the applicant will have to grant you an extension.
I'm okay with closing the public hearing.
Anyone else?
Commissioner Wagner, I'm okay with closing the public hearing. Since we didn't have any public participation tonight except one email.
Commissioner Paskowitch?
Yes, I'm comfortable with closing the public hearing, also based and concurring with Commissioner Wagner on what he just spoke to.
Commissioner Conway?
Yes, I'm comfortable closing the public hearing.
Commissioner Ancona?
Yep, I'm comfortable.
Okay. So, I guess then we have to have a motion, Mr. Hinckley, as far as closing the public hearing. We need a motion to do that.
Yeah, you can just make a motion to close the public hearing and we can discuss it under old business if that's what you choose to do.
Okay. So
I'll make the motion to close the public
I'll
hearing.
present it. Oh, hold on, I'll make I'll make the motion. I'll just say, I'd like to have a motion for the public hearing to close the public hearing for application 2022-05 for construction of a single family homes in the Upland Review area at 359 Church Street and 321 Tremont Street rear. Applicant owner AA Nofria Building and Development LLC. Contact Alan Giovanni. So may I have a motion?
A second? What do you need, a second or a motion now?
I need a motion and then a second.
Okay. I'll make the motion.
Moved by
I'll second
Commissioner,
it.
moved by Commissioner Bashan.
Commissioner
Seconded by
Wagner,
Commissioner
second.
Wagner. Shall we take a voice vote or is we'll call the roll?
Your choice. You want to do a roll call? That's fine.
Let's do a roll call since we're remote. Go ahead, Ms. Gibbons.
Commissioner Ancona,
Yes.
Commissioner Bashan,
Yes.
Commissioner Conway,
Yes.
Commissioner Paskowitz,
Yes.
Chairman Sadil,
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner.
Yes.
This is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for my team, I assume, based on comments from the commissioners, that you won't be discussing this under old business tonight and taking any action?
It is on the agenda. Alan, if they choose to discuss it, I don't know what their position is going to be.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask Eric a question? John
Sure,
Bishop?
go ahead.
Eric, now, if we do discuss it, is it that we can't bring up anything new now? Is that what it is, once the public
Correct. You
hearing?
can't,
is closed?
you
Right.
can't introduce any
We
more.
are
new evidence.
deliberating. We are deliberating.
So it's
Only-
just deliberations.
But we
And
can't ask questions of the applicant or
Nope.
the Mr. Bon Giovanni?
no,
It's open. It's closed.
you guys have closed the
No
hearing,
more. No more.
just so we're all clear.
That's
And
the
just-
rule. So
Right, and so, and now the 35 days to render the decision is actually the date of the next meeting, which is June 21st. So you will have to render, if you choose not to act tonight or render a decision this evening, you will have to act by that date.
Then I guess there's not much to discuss. I mean,
Only
I
between us.
don't have much to discuss. I
only
should say.
between us.
Yeah.
All right, let's moving on to section 6, new business. No new business. Moving on to section 7, old business application 2022-05 for the construction of single-family homes in the Upland Review area at 359 Church Street and 321 Tremont Street rear. Applicant owner A.A. Nofria Building and Development LLC. Contact Alan Bon Giovanni.
Now, not knowing how the commission is going to act this evening, I did create 2 separate motions. One is to just table this until the next meeting. And the other one I did create suggested conditions, which are the 10 standard conditions, and I extrapolated the information from the soil science report and added 3 additional conditions. So I leave that to you guys.
I'm don't think I'm ready to vote this evening. That's just my opinion. I think we want to sleep on it. The report is just hot off the press, in my opinion. I just feel like I just want to sleep on it
That's
a
fine.
few weeks more. That's my opinion. I open up to the commissioners what they feel.
And as an aside, if the commission would like, I can mail out hard copies of the planting plan and the final report tomorrow. I
And the
assume
conditions as well, and the conditions as well.
I
And
can-
we're allowed to add to those conditions, Mr. Hinckley, or we have another
Yeah,
one that we think?
Yes, they're just
we can-
proposed suggested conditions. So obviously, I wouldn't talk about them outside of the meeting. So you'd have to bring it up at the next meeting and we could have a discussion about them and whatnot.
Mr. Commissioner Baskowitz, you have your hand up.
Yes, there's quite a bit of dialogue this evening, and I brought up quite a few things and they were addressed, but I want to find a balance here for myself to think about it. I don't want to be rushing to making a decision now after this evening and quite a lengthy discussion. And it's, it's a project that is something that I need to think about further. That's all. I like to wait till the next meeting.
Mr. Bashant, how you feel?
Well, I don't want to go over the line or anything, but I'm just, what can we discuss? Can we discuss our feelings, our leanings, compare it to other applications?
As the chairman pointed out, you guys are in deliberations.
That's right, just between us.
There's just right now, there's just no give and take with the public, with the applicant. You're not taking in something that somebody emails you tomorrow or anything. That this is all the evidence that you have received in the last 2 public hearings, the documents that you have, and the testimony you've heard. This is what you're going to base your decision on, and you can deliberate about those.
The record is
Item.
closed. The
Yes.
record is closed. Whatever's in the minutes, what have you, that's where we make our decision.
That I could share with the commission my own personal feelings or my concerns.
Sure, that's fair.
So, I mean, it's
We-
obvious, we've talked about those two lots that are in question there, and that's what kind of a stumbling point for me. So I don't know, we've had other applications where, there was no encroachment into the regulated areas. Matter of fact, a very big one, what we just did over on another street over by Lowe's. And, there was essentially zero encroachment into the regulated area. And this one, I don't know how many lots there are, what we said it was, but it's several of the lots are significantly encroaching. So it's just those two lots are really a sticking point for me. That's all I'll say.
Commissioner Wagner, what is your feeling?
I just want to read the final. I didn't get time today to read the what Ms. Hinckley sent, the final draft. I only have the draft. I'd like to read the final one to make sure there wasn't any major changes in it, which I believe there isn't, but I'd like to just read it and give myself some time to go over it.
Yeah, I did not see any discrepancies other than she said some punctuation, some spacing kind of things.
Yeah, I'm sure. I just had to feel comfortable and
Understood, and I will get that out hopefully tomorrow.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Conway?
Yes, thank you. I agree with Commissioner Bashan's. Lots 3 and 4 have always been a really big concern for me through the whole hearing and presentations. And I can't say that I feel any better about those 2 lots, especially. And I know it's only a fraction of the whole plan that they have, but it's a real concern of mine, the encroachment into the wetlands. So that's my biggest concern. And I'm not, I can absolutely say that nothing has allayed my concerns for it throughout anything that they've presented tonight. Having fences installed or the shrubs, whatever, that has not allayed my fears for that. So that's just my feeling on the whole situation at this point.
Thank you. Commissioner Ancona?
Yeah, I think those 2 lots are the ones in question here. And those homeowners need to be notified of where they are. And I think Commissioner Bashan had a good point. We don't want people using their yard as a landfill, so they need to be notified. But besides that, I'm good. I'm good with this project.
Okay. But I think I got everybody. I think that I don't think I missed anybody. Everybody's spoken. So the general consensus, I think we're going to table this for this evening. I guess we're going to sleep on the details, and we will render a decision at our next meeting. Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
I'm in agreement.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
You probably just want to make the motion, have the vote to table it, just so we're all good.
Would like to have a vote? Okay,
Sure.
so I'd like to have a motion that we will table the decision on application 2022-05 for construction of a single-family homes in the Upland Review area at 359 Church Street and 321 Tremont Street, rear. Applicant owner, AA Nofria Building and Development, LLC. Contact Alan Giovanni. May I have a motion?
So moved. This is Commissioner Conway.
Moved by Commissioner Conway. Do I have a second?
Second, John Bashan.
Second by John Bishant. Shall we take a roll call vote, Ms. Gibbons?
Commissioner Ancona,
Yes.
Commissioner Bashand,
Yes.
Commissioner Conway,
Yes.
Commissioner Paskowitz,
Yes.
Chairman Sadil,
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Moving on to old business section B, application 2022-06 for construction activities in the Upland Review area at 165 Stam Road. applicant and contact Mike DeMayo, owner, MRD Property Holdings LLC. Is the applicant present, make a last minute statement, or?
I don't know if Alan's still in the room. No, Alan has left the room, looks like, and the applicant is not here.
Okay. Give me one moment. Pull this up my map. So I did not have any further questions relative to the plantings that are. Oh, this is the wrong map, so everywhere.
My sense that I got from your deliberations last meeting were there were no large concerns that the 4-bay system was actually going to help improve water flow and treat it as it goes off site. And there was no additional conditions suggested or discussed at that time. So I just made a motion for the 10 standard conditions.
I just want to pull up that map real quick.
Sure.
Well, there were some plantings along the Webster Brook. I've got the right motion here. The map here. I like that standard condition about the 5 years, the stabilization, you know, the one, the note I always like.
Okay.
This was the one, just excuse me.
Let me see if I can find some
Conducted
language
by a
for that.
biologist. Additional inspections of the planting area should be conducted during the growing season for 5 subsequent years to ascertain survival rates, soil stabilization, invasive species maintenance. Copies of the reports documenting the findings from the inspection should be provided to the town of Newington. Inland Wetlands Commission, if the mortality rate of the plantings is greater than 15%, the plantings should be replaced. Something to that effect, where there's some plantings along the Webster Brook there, in that they're going to put some a basin there, if I recall.
Yeah, hold on, let me just see if. Street. So you're looking at like number 12, that the kind of.
Yes. Right, exactly.
So if you'd like to add that, I can certainly, you can certainly add that. We can call it, you know, condition A.
I don't want to be unreasonable there, Eric. It's just that it was like what they call the grass swale. All there would be even any plantings to inspect. When I look at the map.
Grab the map real quick.
What they call this pre-treatment sediment 4-bay. Again, if there's no plantings in there, oh, what's the point, right? So.
What page are you looking at? I'm sorry, Andreas.
Page 3 of 5. And over on the left-hand side by the Webster Brook there is what they call the sediment 4-bay.
Right there. That's just a 4-bay, so they're really not putting any plantings in there.
And the ones immediately right up against Webster Brook is existing.
Correct.
Existing trees there.
Yes. All it is, you know, they're putting a grass swale for the overflow to flow through, and it has grass matting down there.
All right, no point in doing that. I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm good. So going back, on Are there any further questions from commissioners? I'm satisfied. Is there any other questions from commissioners at this time? Please raise your hand. Otherwise, I would assume that's a no. All right, I don't see anyone with their hand up. So, Mr. Hinckley, is the application complete?
Yes, it is.
All right. So, Mr. Acting Secretary Wagner, may I have a motion for application 2022-06 for construction activities in the Upland Review area at 165 Stam Road, applicant, and contact Mike DeMayo, owner, MRD Property Holdings LLC.
So I want to read the B application, right?
The one that's on the
Applicant-
screen now?
All right, let's go. Let's go to the screen. Sorry about that. Getting phone calls at the same time. Okay, here we are. Motion to approve. Motion to approve application 2022-06 with a 10 standards conditions.
I'll second it.
Seconded, so moved, seconded by Commissioner Bashant. Final discussion. Ms. Gibbons, please call the roll.
Commissioner Ancona,
Yes.
Commissioner Bashand,
Yes.
Commissioner Conway,
Yes.
Commissioner Paskowitz,
Yes.
Chairman Sagal,
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner.
Yes.
Great, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to section 8, public participation and non-agenda items. Each speaker limited to 2 minutes. Mr. Hinckley, is there anyone on the line?
No one in the room.
All right. Moving on to communications and reports, section 9, item A, agent communications. Mr. Hinckley, do you have anything to report?
A couple of things. For agent approval, I approved an application at 113 Ellsworth Street for a shed in the URA. The second item of interest is the Culver Street Wetland Permit 2021-23. The applicant has sent in a notice to satisfy condition 1 of the original permit that they are transferring the permit to their construction subsidiary known as Culver Street Apartments LLC. All conditions of the permit remain in full force and effect. There is no change to the application. It's just a notification of the transfer of the permit. This has been done in the past. Usually it's just done under communication like I'm doing right now. And we will send the applicant a notification that you've acknowledged the transfer of the permit. And that's really all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Hinckley. Moving on to section B.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Um,
Commissioner Bashant.
Yeah, let me see, am I unmuted? Yeah. Eric, do you have anything from Mr. Fosterberg?
Gary has been extremely busy. I assume you're referring to Alumni Road?
Yeah, because I was just looking at the minutes on page 40. We discussed,
I did ask him for a report and he actually apologized to me as I was leaving today. He says he didn't think he was going to get to it. When he gets me something, I will forward it to you guys via email.
all right, thank him
I'll
for
get
us,
something.
for me, anyway.
Yeah, I'll send it to the whole commission.
All right, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No problem, no problem, no problem. Item B, Town Council Liaisons Communications. I see Councilor Bedrejko and Councilor Rada on the line. Do you have anything to report?
Councilor Bedrejko, would you like to start and then I can fill in if there's anything you
yeah.
forget?
Sure, thank you. I think the most interesting thing possibly to this commission is on April 26th, the town manager gave a very thorough and detailed presentation to the town council on all the development that's going on in town, approved and in process. And a lot of, some of it is commercial, but an awful lot of it is residential. And in total, there's approximately 1,026 new units that are coming into town. And this includes stuff that, you guys have been involved in, the Payne Road, Culver Street, 3333, Berlin Turnpike. There's hotels on Fenn Road and Church Street. And the estimates, like I said, it was somewhat detailed, and he did, the town manager did contact, let's say, the police and for estimates on impact. They said, like, if all this comes to fruition, there'll be, I believe he said 850, no, it can't be. 850 additional police calls, 40 to 45 additional fire calls, 810 feet of new sidewalks and pavement, 220 more students, which a lot of people several comments were made that they felt it was possibly underestimated. And personally, I believe it is too. And 1,500 additional automobiles in town. Quite frankly, I think that's kind of underestimated as well. If we're talking over 1,000 new units, the way it seems like everybody in a household now has a car. So I'm just wondering whether that's underestimated as well. But if you want further details on it, the presentation, I believe, is on the town website. And that's all I have, Commissioner Rada. Councilor Rada.
Thank you, Councilor Bedrejko. I just want to reiterate what Councilor Bedrejko just said. The report from Town Manager Chapman was really, I think it was eye-opening for some of us, or some of the counselors who don't sit on, for example, this commission or planning and zoning. And we were even thinking that to be able to do this quarterly would be a real service, that it keeps us up to date. We know what's going on in terms of how things are moving ahead and what the impact that the development may have on our community. So I appreciated that. Councilor Bedrejko and I requested this. We were very interested in having this take place, and I think it was very well received. The only other thing that might be of interest, if you haven't already heard, is that a vote was taken to establish a permanent municipal building commission. That was done, and it was voted in, I think, with the April 26th meeting, Gail.
Yes, I believe, yeah.
So that would really be,
yeah. It was a chock full meeting.
Yes, so that would be the only other bit of news that I think we can report. Thank you.
Right. Just kind of back cycling again. Listening to the in-depth discussion tonight, and particularly the terminology and information by Commissioner Paskowitz on fragmentation of wildlife, and seeing all this development in town, it just gave me some things to think about.
Likewise. And thank you all for this lengthy discussion. I felt like it was well worth our time to hear the discussion and be able to gather this information. So thank you all.
I had a question for one of the counselors.
Commissioner Bushan.
Thank you. That is pretty sobering with the town manager report. I don't know if it was intended to be like that or not, but did he offer a net? Is there a net gain here after all of that, or was there any agreement on that it's still all the development is still worth it?
Well, one of the reasons that Councilor Rada and I wanted this presentation was not to be anti-development or to stop anything, but to kind of put this all out there and ask the questions. Are we prepared to, as a town, to handle this amount of development? And if not, what do we need to do to prepare for it? So again, it wasn't intended to be, oh my God, you know, what's happening, whatever, because, you know, given the financials, given the, you know, what we need to do as a community, but also are we going to be able, from an infrastructure perspective, to handle this development in an appropriate way that still maintains, you know, the services and the quality of life. The town manager, in my opinion, I don't know about you, Councilor Rada, seemed to, you know, it wasn't problematic. But there were no details, well, that I mean, you know, the financial impact is going to be positive in terms of grand list growth, but again, you know, balanced against, okay, what type of infrastructure changes will we need to invest in to balance that appropriately? I don't think really came out clearly in the discussion. I don't know. What about you? Did you think so, Kim?
I think that it did beg some questions, you know, hearing what the impact in terms of police calls, fire calls, EMS calls. I think there were also questions that were asked regarding impact to our school system. And of course, as Gail said, the roadways. It gives us pause. And I think one of the things that we're also thinking about also, and I'm sure that you do on this commission, is what is our identity as a community? You know, who do we want to be, and what do we need? As Gail said, what infrastructure do we need to have in place, and what are we looking at in terms of development? And again, I am certainly not anti-development. It was a question, what I think stimulated the request was that we were coming to these various boards and commissions and thought that it was very important that we had an update and a comprehensive overview about what's happening in the community in terms of economic development and what impact that's going to have moving forward from this point on. This is what stimulated. I think it was a very worthwhile conversation. I don't think the conversation's over. As I said, I would be very happy to see this done quarterly so that we are kept abreast, and all the councilors and the mayor are kept abreast of what's going on.
Yeah, and one thing that, in fact, listening to hearings and developer presentations at this commission is, you know, people keep referring to the POCD. Well, you know, in your POCD, it says that, you know, we need diverse housing. In your POCD, it says that, you know, we need more housing type. Then your POCD, but also what nobody seems to be acknowledging, in my humble opinion, is also in the POCD, we have a vision that says we are a primarily medium density, single family, owner occupied community. So I think sometimes that just needs to be considered, I think, as we move forward. And one other thing, it's not town council related, but you all might be interested in the next TPZ meeting. There's a public hearing, and they kept it open, regarding state mandated accessory dwelling units. That has changed significantly. We have ADUs. We have some, you know, zoning regulations allowing ADUs, but the new state or the state regulations that have come out are somewhat different from what we have. And for example, if we followed the state directives, they're allowing our detached dwelling units. There doesn't require that people be related to you in order, you know, to be living in those units. It's pretty substantial changes. But communities do, and again, Eric, you can, expand on this or correct me when I'm wrong. Communities will have the option to opt out of this state regulation. So our the public hearing and what our town planner is trying to do is perhaps modify our current ADUs to come more into compliance with what we want to do as a community, still allow accessory dwelling units, but perhaps not be as, not follow the state regulations to the extent, because we're a small, community. We don't have, our lots are small. We don't have, we're dense. So perhaps the state directives aren't really suited for Newington, but yet, we do want to be compliant and, be cognizant of the need for ADUs, but we want to do it our way. So the public hearing has been continued until the next meeting, which I think is next week.
I think
That's
next
fine.
Wednesday.
Yeah, so you might want to, Eric can probably give you the drafts or the information, or you can go online and look at it if you're interested.
Yeah, all the links are available. So what Gail said is correct. We're trying to opt out, and if we opt out at the TPZ level, there's a public hearing held at the town council level, and then we opt out from the state, and then we create our own regulations the town is more comfortable with going forward. So that's what I have.
That's interesting. Thank you, counselors.
You're welcome.
All right, shall we move on to item 9C, Pond Life Research and Education? Commissioner Pasquich, do you have anything to update this month?
Yes, I just want to reiterate my probably more recent concern over the last few months as I've been following fragmentation and lack of corridor due to development of roads, due to development of housing and commercial buildings, which is being addressed throughout countries. I'm not sure where we lie with that in the United States or Connecticut, but there are overpass land bridges being built where land is being fragmented through development, where they do acknowledge there's wildlife and aquatic life that need to continue to move to places where they've been, because that's what they do. And I'm starting to look at this closer, hopefully for Newington, that we might find a possible means of a regulation or recommendation through DEP or some other agency, including ourselves, collaborating to have this looked at for land use planning and have developers look at this so that if a road is built and there is indeed wildlife there, that they continue to pass over roads and not get killed. It's that simple. Or lose their way coming back because of an incident. And myself, I worked in the town of Summers about 8 years ago. I was coming home on a Thursday night from a later day, evening time through a suburb of houses like on my street. And it was getting dark and the side of my car got slammed. I thought I got hit by a truck. It was 2 deer. One hit my front fender and one hit my door. I couldn't get out of the car. Fortunately, the car, didn't catch on fire, or I didn't have a problem. I didn't get hit through the window by a horn, which could have happened. So I called the state police because that's what they have, their resident troopers. And they came within a reasonable amount of time, was hailing out. And their duty, if you didn't know this, if a deer is hit by a car and it isn't dead on the road, they have the authority to shoot the deer within a reasonable amount of time at the site. And as I was out of the car from the other side, I was able to get out. The state trooper was there and we were talking, and my car had, significant damage, not enough to not be able to drive home because the headlights work and such. And a woman came out of one of the homes, and one of the deer had already escaped and ran off in a direction it had come from. And the other one, which was fairly large, I would say 250 pounds, was kneeling down on the road next to my car. And this woman came out of the house and she was coming over and she was petting the deer and talking to it. And after about, I would say 15 minutes, the deer got up and walked away. But that was my experience of fragmentation of development and deer trying to cross in the path that they've been doing. So, I come from seeing it in real life. And that's what I'm looking forward to trying to apply to corridors that wildlife need to continue moving about on. So that's my research for this evening. Thank you.
Commissioner Paskowitz, you're fortunate you were not injured.
I was.
You were.
I certainly was.
Physically.
Yes.
Okay, you don't have to go into that if you don't want to. It's personal.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I just feel sorry for these animals, that's all.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, we're at item 10, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Conway. May I have a second?
Second, Commissioner Pascal.
Second by Commissioner Paskowitz. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Take
Good
care.
night, all.
We'll see you soon.
Right.
Night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.
Good night.